Hey guys, what's up? It's Paul, and today we're going to talk about reading fiction, and specifically the topic of spoilers. Now, when we do our speed reading and memorization courses, one of the most common strategies we suggest to students and professionals is to get familiar with your material before you read it. What we call an inspection of the material. You should always inspect your material before you read it. Now, with nonfiction, like a textbook, it's very easy to do this. You look at your headings, subheadings, boldface words. Maybe you read your introduction and your conclusion. But when you're reading a novel, it's not quite the same. You don't have those headings and subheadings. And there's, of course, the concern about what if I spoil the ending? And people are worried about spoilers. But I want you to know about some relatively recent research out of University of California, San Diego. And what they found counterintuitively was that spoilers are not spoiling stories. In this particular study, what they did, they had two groups they basically read a short story that had a crazy twist at the end, some Game of Thrones type stuff. And they looked at one group and they just read the story beginning to end. And they measured their levels of enjoyment. The other group, they had them read the same story, but before they read the story, they were given a quick synopsis, told what's gonna happen in the story, and they were also told about that crazy twist at the end. Now, interestingly enough, when they measured the levels of enjoyment for this group that had the spoiled story, they knew how it was going to end. That group enjoyed it much, much better than the group that just read it traditionally, beginning to end. Now, in the study, they're not really telling us why. This was kind of surprising to the researchers. They're not telling us exactly why this is happening, but they suspect maybe it has to do with the fact that our brain processes information easier when we know how things are going to end. The brain is sort of like a prediction machine, and we're constantly trying to anticipate things and predict what's coming next. And if we know how it's going to end, it makes it easier for our brain to process things, and that could lead to higher levels of enjoyment. But they also compared it to, it's similar to the experience of watching a movie a second time or third time. You ever have that where you watched a movie, you really liked it, and then you watch it again with a friend or family member at some point in the future, and sometimes you enjoy it just as much, sometimes you enjoy it more because you pick up things maybe you wouldn't have found if you didn't know how it was going to end. So they're not quite exactly sure why it's happening, but they have some speculation. But I want you to know, if you're going to read something that is fiction, it's still not a bad idea to kind of parse through the information, see what you're going to be getting yourself into. Obviously, people will read the back, but maybe it's not a bad idea to read a summary of chapter 1, a summary of chapter 2. In fact, when we have students that we work with that are dealing with Shakespeare, one of the things we'll do is have them read a summary of Act 1 and then read Act 1. So you're sort of spoiling the story in a sense, but it makes it easier to read Shakespeare, of course, which is notoriously difficult. But if you read a summary of Act 2 and now you're actually reading the original text, it's going to be much easier to process that information. And a lot of people find themselves enjoying it more. And of course, they'll have better understanding, even though they might miss some of the words here and there. So I'll leave it up to you whether or not you decide if you want to spoil a story or not. Also kind of depends on your purpose. Are you reading this for pure enjoyment, or are you reading this for school and you just need to knock it out? But just be aware, there is some research showing that spoilers don't necessarily spoil stories.